I just got back from seeing Terminator Genisys, and this was one of the most unfairly maligned movies I've seen in quite a while. Before I get into it, let me just say I'm playing the Terminator for Sega CD, one of the best Terminator games. On top of it being a lot of fun, it has an amazing soundtrack by Tommy Tallarico, one of my all-time favorite video game soundtracks. On to the movie itself, I'm going to try to stay as spoiler-free as possible. Unlike the trailers, which kind of gave away a lot of things. Initially, when I saw the first trailer, I was intrigued because the Terminator movies have always been about alternate timelines and changing the future and whatnot, and this was the first time where they were doing something that specifically changed the past. This was changing the past movies, so it was kind of messing with that timeline. And it was a very intriguing premise. Couldn't have been easy to try to match those old shots. They did a good job with redoing them with some of the new actors. I think the only one that really stuck out as not working was the one with the three punk rockers, the nice night for a walk guys. That was the only one that kind of stuck out, but I thought everything else was really good. The good, I thought the action was awesome, much better looking than the trailers made it look. I wonder if the trailers that they used were from like an earlier render or something, because the CGI in the trailers looked awful, but in the actual movie, they looked great. There were a couple of things, well, I'll get into the bad when I get to the bad. I liked the non-forced humor. Some of the stuff in there was funny, some of the throwbacks to the original movies. Arnold had some great moments. I liked how well they matched the look of Terminator 1 and 2 for the parts that they needed to kind of emulate. The T-1000 looked really cool, and they threw in a couple of nods to the movies here and there. I don't want to spoil them, because that would take some of the fun out of it. But there were a couple of nods to the first two movies beyond the obvious going back in the past and, come with me if you want to live and all that stuff. Just a couple other things here and there that made it that much more enjoyable for longtime fans of the series. The thing I probably like the most is this seems to be a new trend in rebooting movies. They did it with Star Trek, they did it with the X-Men movies, and now they did it with Terminator. It's a way to be both a reboot for the series as well as a sequel. So you can watch this after the other Terminator movies and still feel like it's a continuation of the story. I like that a lot because it's not just saying that the other things didn't exist, the other things happened, it's just this is what's happening now. I thought that was pretty cool. I liked how they updated Skynet to more modern technology. They explained it in Terminator 2, where Judgment Day was inevitable. It's just that the humans kept pushing it back every time they would fight back. There would be resistance, and the loop would always continue. Judgment Day is pushed back a few years, so it makes sense that now Skynet would be different as a result of that. I liked how they were changing elements of the first few movies, but doing it in a way that would make things fresh so that it didn't feel like they were just rehashing the old movies, which is one of my biggest problems with reboots, is they'll take parts of the original movie and then just kind of do them slightly different. Whereas with this, it was showing those old scenes from a different perspective, and I thought that was very cool and very unique. As far as the bad, I was annoyed that it was PG-13. There was no reason for it. There were a few times where it felt like they were holding back, where it should have been R, but they had to dial it back for PG-13, and that's annoying. It didn't ruin the film, it just kind of took a little bit away from the overall enjoyment of it. I think it would have been better if they wouldn't have had that restriction in there. For better or for worse, Paramount insists on keeping the franchise PG-13. There was some CGI abuse. There was a couple of scenes where you could definitely tell it was CGI, but not as bad as some movies. Some movies, you look and you can tell that the majority of the stuff isn't there. Whereas this, there was just a couple of times where I thought the compositing could have been a little bit better. Honestly, it took me out of the movie for like a second, and then I was right back in. I didn't care for Jason Clarke, who played John Connor. I thought that he was just miscast. He didn't seem like a leader. I don't know if it was just the directing or if his acting, because I'm not really familiar with him. He was probably the weakest point of the movie for me. And I thought it was going to be Jai Courtney, because every other movie I've seen him in, I've not liked him at all. I thought that he was annoying, and his acting was just usually very bad. But in this was the first time I saw him where not only did I think that his acting was good, he didn't annoy me. I liked his interpretation of Kyle Reese. I would have rather have had Michael Biehn in the role, but as much as I love Michael Biehn, he's obviously too old for the part now. It would have been cool if he was in there, maybe playing his future self or something, or his father, or some kind of role, but he wasn't for whatever reason. Yeah, Jai Courtney didn't bother me at all. I thought Emilia Clarke was pretty good. She could have been a little tougher, especially considering how much of a badass Linda Hamilton was in Terminator 2. This variation of Sarah Connor was supposed to have already been fighting, and so she could have been a little tougher. But again, this is just minor nitpicky stuff. It didn't detract from the overall. The biggest complaint I have isn't even about the movie itself, it's about the marketing for the film. For whatever reason, the marketing team went above and beyond to make sure that they spoiled this movie. They spoiled it in the trailer, which I actually avoided, because usually what I'll do, I'll watch a trailer up to a point of where I feel I've seen enough, which is usually like maybe 30, 45 seconds. And then I'm like, okay, I get the gist of this. This looks good. I don't need to see anymore, because I know the more I watch, the more of the film they're going to ruin for me. So with this, the first time I saw the trailer and I kind of got the gist of what was going on, I shut it off. I was like, okay, good, I'm done. But unfortunately, they spoiled a major part of the film in the trailer, and people all over social media were just throwing that out there. And so I was doing a really good job of avoiding even that. But then they couldn't keep it in their pants, and they spoiled the major thing on the movie poster. That pissed me off so much, because there was no reason for it. They could have easily just done it differently. Any number of things they could have done. They didn't need to show that on the poster. So I think that probably ended up hurting it, because I know a lot of people who were actually looking forward to the movie up to that point. And then they were like, well, I already know the big secret, so why am I going to go watch it now? And yes, that would have been nice going in. You didn't know about that, and then it ended up being one of those holy shit moments. But unfortunately, they kind of spoiled it and took that away. However, there still was actually a lot of surprises in the film, which made me happy that they didn't show everything. Now, again, I didn't watch anything beyond, 40 seconds of the trailer, so I don't know how much else they spoiled. I just know the big spoiler, and that watching the film, I felt that there was still a lot of stuff in there that warranted checking out. Knowing that one reveal was annoying, but it didn't make the film less enjoyable. It just made that moment less of a surprise. And of course, the ugly. I wanted to see this movie a couple of weeks ago, but couldn't, so I checked it out now, finally. And within the past couple weeks, it seemed there was a recurring theme where people would just get on message boards or would get onto social media, wherever, and would just say, Terminator Genisys, the movie's bad. Bad, 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 bad. And then somebody would reply, be like, hey, I saw it and I liked it. What didn't you like about it? Oh, well, first of all, the movie's bad and it sucked. And that's not a response. That's trolling. It's one thing if you didn't like the movie. Fine. But have an argument. Tell me why you didn't like the movie. I didn't like the acting. I thought the CGI was bad. I thought that the story was convoluted. Whatever. Don't just, I saw the movie and it was bad. That's not an argument. I will say, though, there were a lot of people that were complaining about how the film was full of plot holes. Now, I'm not saying that the movie didn't have plot holes, but from where I was sitting, a lot of the plot holes that people were complaining about were very easily debunked by doing a little thing that's called paying attention to the movie. I think that the majority of what I saw people calling plot holes were not plot holes at all. If you didn't like the movie and there were genuine plot holes that you found that made you dislike the movie, that's fine, I understand that. But don't say that Arnold Schwarzenegger having gray hair doesn't make sense when a half hour into the movie, they explain that. I'm throwing an easy one out there because, like I said, I wanted to remain spoiler-free on this. Overall, seriously, I like the movie a lot. I went in expecting to be disappointed because they did have a major reveal that did ruin part of the movie, but the movie kicked serious ass. if you were interested in it and it is still playing in your neighborhood, check it out. Go see a matinee or something. If you miss it in theaters, check it out when it finally hits DVD, which probably won't be too far off. Probably 3 months from now. That's about the average. Oh, and the other thing, too, one thing I found out kind of late, really. I thought that calling it Terminator Genisys, to which everybody was calling it Terminator CDI, Terminator Saturn, I didn't know until recently, but the word Genisys is actually a computer term. It's referring to a sys file, SYS, referring to the system or critical files that the system depends on to function properly, as well as Genesis, the beginning or the start. Considering that this was the first in a planned new trilogy, this is the first story in this new arc. It's referring to the computer system files, so it actually makes sense. I kind of feel like a shit for goofing on it because the people were being clever and they weren't doing something stupid like replacing a letter with a number like they did with 7 or Scream 4. This is actually something that exists. So, if you can, check it out. Now that I've got more time, I'm actually going to be trying to do more of these. But most of them I'm going to try to do a little bit closer to their release date, as opposed to this one where it's like 3 weeks later. It's actually going to be out of theaters soon. So I don't know the next movie that I'm going to check out. It's not going to be Pixels. Basically, these are going to be movies that I'm interested in checking out. I'm not going to go wasting my money on seeing a piece of shit movie just so I can get on here and bitch about how much it sucked. If I see something and ends up not being good, then I'll be honest about it. I'll say that it's not good. But in the case of this, I went in a little weary and ended up very much enjoying it. As I said a couple weeks ago, this is all bonus material. It's not detracting from GoodBadFlicks. It's not detracting from the exploring videos. This is just supplemental stuff that I hope you guys enjoy. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you next time.